Premier and Minister for Finance, Dr. The Honorable D. Orlando Smith says after an initial review of the fiscal status of the government of the Virgin Islands, the financial situation is grim. He said on assumption of office, his government met a running deficit of some $51 million that had been incurred by the previous administration. The Premier was speaking during an address on the state of the territory's finances on Tuesday, December 6th. He added that of this deficit, some $19.8 million constitute unpaid bills.
We have carried out an initial review of the fiscal status of the government of the Virgin Islands. I have reviewed the commitments against the public purse, in addition to assessing our liquidity levels, better referred to as the cash we have on hand. My fellow Virgin Islanders, the situation is grim. The financial state of the territory, to put it bluntly, is not good. Fellow citizens, it is far worse than we anticipated. The reality is that on assumption of office, we met a running deficit of some $51 million that had been incurred by the previous administration, despite their full knowledge that revenue collections were down during the same period. Of this running deficit, our findings are that there are unpaid bills for capital projects to the tune of some $19.8 million.
The Premier further cited some $14 million in individual contracts, many of which were signed by the former Premier leading up to this year's elections. He added that cash balances as of November 4th were slightly over $40 million, but he called this a picture worthy of serious concern when compared to the country's $51 million deficit.
As we peeled away the layers on this commitment, we have to date identified some $14.8 million in individual contracts signed, a large portion of which were petty contracts signed by my predecessor in the waning hours of the last administration. Coupled with this are numerous project overruns and variation orders that make a mockery of budgetary allocations, compromise the execution of other projects, and severely weaken the fiscal position of the government of the Virgin Islands, and by extension, the prospects for the immediate future for you, the people of these islands. Cash balances as of the 4th of November 2011 were slightly over $40 million. But when taken in the context of the running deficit of $51 million, this presents a picture that is worthy of serious concern.
The Premier added that this fiscal position has resulted in the Virgin Islands breaching the liquidity requirements of the borrowing guidelines agreement signed with Her Majesty's government.
The current breach of the borrowing guidelines potentially has very serious implications for the territory, as this suggests that we are on a path of unsustainability. Further, as a result of our current state of play with respect to this, the loan that was approved by the Caribbean Development Bank in May of this year for fixing our roads cannot be finalized without approval from Her Majesty's government. As of today, we do not have that permission, but I am confident that my government's commitment to prudent financial management as we go forward will help us to address the concerns of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and secure this approval.
The Premier identified the primary failure as using the Treasury as if it were an independent printing press for money and ignoring the very industries that have put the BVI on its feet, tourism and financial services. However, the Premier said that his government will be working toward rectifying the territory's financial standing, and he pointed to small businesses, tourism and small contractors, which he said will perhaps be the driving forces behind the territory's economic turnaround.